Dave, ever consider subbing in Andy Dalton for Bryce Young, given the offensive inefficiency?
Bryce is our quarterback. I'd love to see this thing just continue to take the next steps offensively right now.
Where do you start next week?
Bryce is our quarterback. We're going to just continue to shore up and fix the things we need to fundamentally, and hopefully we'll take another step this week.
We just got some shocking news that the Carolina Panthers are going to be benching their former #1 overall pick just a year ago in Bryce Young for veteran quarterback Andy Dalton. If you watched Bryce last season and then the first 2 games of this year, I guess it wouldn't be super shocking because he's looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, but I feel like it's just kind of the optics of this whole thing because the Panthers literally drafted this guy less than 2 years ago, and they're already kind of signaling, we're done with him. Only 2 games into the season with a new head coach, a new offensive line, a bunch of new weaponry on the outside, and they're moving on from him for a veteran quarterback who really hasn't been a starter in several years now in Andy Dalton. This is just unbelievable news. Now, personally, during the draft process, I was one of the people that was actually not super high on Bryce as a prospect. I know that he was seen as like the consensus quarterback 1. Everyone just said, hey, this guy's going to be a good NFL quarterback, going back to his days at Mater Dei when he was a 5-star recruit, then going to Alabama, winning the Heisman Trophy, looking like a super electrifying quarterback. I still just did not see it translating to the next level, and that's simply because of his size. He's only 5'9", if you want to say maybe close to 5'10". He's still probably the smallest quarterback in the league. He doesn't even have a lot of thickness to him because that's kind of the difference between his size and Kyler Murray. They're around the same height, but Kyler Murray is probably 20, 30, 40 pounds heavier. And then you combine that with the fact that Bryce Young does not have a good arm. It's probably bottom 5 in the league. And then his athleticism is still probably maybe bottom 10 in the league. Kyler Murray can get away with being that short and not being able to really see over his offensive line at times because of his tremendous athleticism and speed to run away from defenders. And then just his arm talent. He can throw passes 60, 65 yards down the field on a line. And I don't think Bryce Young has those capabilities. So I never really saw Bryce Young working out as like a truly elite, really worthy of the #1 overall pick type quarterback. But in that same breath, I didn't think he would be benched and potentially out of the league in like 2 or 3 years. The defenders and supporters of Bryce Young thought he was going to be like this Drew Brees type player where he had good anticipation, good accuracy, and just kind of like a pocket passing quarterback, kind of like what we see with Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. And I saw that vision, and I kind of said Bryce Young's ceiling is to become what Tua has become in Miami, where he's stationary in the pocket. He does a lot of throws over the middle of the field where he can utilize his accuracy and anticipation. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think Bryce Young is very accurate or has great anticipation either. And that's kind of what we've been seeing from him over the past couple of years. What trait does he have to really hang his hat on? He doesn't have good arm talent. He does not have good athleticism. He doesn't even have good accuracy, decision making, or anticipatory thrower. So it's like if you're building an offense around him, or you're trying to find some hope about Bryce still being the quarterback of the future and him developing into being at least a solid option at the quarterback position, what trait is there where you can just be like, yeah, that's it, Bryce Young, I see it, I can have some hope that he's going to develop? He really hasn't shown anything over the past couple of years. And he got a mulligan as a rookie because the situation definitely was not good. The offensive line was bad. The receivers and the weaponry was not good. The coaching staff with Frank Reich was not good. But this offseason, the Panthers made wholesale changes to see really how good Bryce is. They brought in 2 new guards. They brought in Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis on the offensive line. They also brought in a ton of new weapons, Xavier Legette in the first round. They also traded for Deontay Johnson. They even selected Jatavion Sanders in the middle rounds of the draft. And they brought in a new offensive mind in Dave Canales and his entire new coaching staff on that side of the ball. And the fact of the matter is that Bryce has looked worse in these first 2 games than he probably did at any point last season. And when you compare the situations, it kind of doesn't really add up why he's playing worse this year. It could be just because of a lack of confidence. Maybe it's just because he's not a good fit in Canales' offense. But through the first 2 weeks, he has 0 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, and below a 45 passer rating. I mean, that is just truly unplayable. He only threw for 84 yards against the Chargers, and it seemed like every 3rd and long, he was just throwing a check down for 1 or 2 yards, and you just can't function as a team or offense that way. And you saw it on Adam Thielen's face. You saw it on Deontay Johnson's face. Just their body language. They were very frustrated with him, and I just think the veterans on the Panthers team probably went to the ownership, maybe even just Canales himself, and said, we cannot win a game with Bryce Young at quarterback. Can we please make a switch? And I think a big reason why this story is so shocking on this Monday afternoon is because Canales said in the presser after last game that Bryce Young is our starting quarterback, and there's no really controversy regarding that position. And then less than 24 hours later, he's literally coming out and saying, no, we're going to Andy Dalton. Bryce Young, he's benched. So when I see that drastic change in philosophy in less than 24 hours, I just feel like that's either coming from the ownership group, maybe the general manager, somebody in the organization, or the players on the team just saying, Canales, if you do not start Andy Dalton, you're going to lose this locker room. You need to make a switch. And Adam Schefter did just report that the decision to bench him came from Dave Canales, the new general manager in Dan Morgan, and EVP Brant Tillis. So yeah, my theory kind of checks out that Bryce Young was not just solely benched by Canales. The organization also stepped in and said, you know what? We cannot function as a team with this guy playing quarterback. And you have to remember that Dan Morgan and this new Panthers organization did not select Bryce Young. That was Scott Fitterer and the past regime who just all got fired this past year. These guys were kind of brought in to fix the situation and make Bryce into a functional quarterback. And it seems like after only 2 games, they're throwing in the towel, and it does seem like the Panthers are going to be drafting a new quarterback next year. And now I think we need to start having a discussion that Bryce Young might be one of the worst #1 overall picks of all time. He couldn't even make it halfway through his second season. That is unheard of for #1 overall picks. Obviously, there's been some really bad #1 overall picks throughout history, like Jamarcus Russell or David Carr. But in the case of like Jamarcus Russell, he had the physical talent. He just did not have the drive or want to be a really good NFL quarterback. From everything that we know about Bryce Young, that is just not the case. I feel like he does really want to be good. He does care about becoming a good NFL quarterback. The problem is he just has so many limitations that he can just not overcome. And I think that has become pretty apparent. So I guess the big question now for Bryce Young is if he does get traded, I don't think it's going to happen at any point this season. He'll probably just stay as the backup or maybe even get another opportunity to start if Andy Dalton doesn't play well himself. But after this year and in the offseason, I do think we could see Bryce Young get traded away to a new team, have a fresh start. Maybe he won't be a starter right away. He'll have to be a backup and kind of earn his stripes a little bit to get on the field again. But I do wonder, like in a better situation with a better coaching staff, if he could have a little bit more success and become at least a solid backup maybe. Because I do think you can make a case right now that Bryce Young's not a top 64 quarterback in the league, which would mean that he wouldn't even be a good backup #2. But I think solely just because of his draft position and just kind of the pedigree that he's built up over high school and college, I do think he's going to get a second chance somewhere. But I personally still do not think it's going to work out anywhere because, as I've stated a couple times throughout this video now, he does not have a redeeming trait or the physical attributes to be a high-level quarterback in the National Football League. The decision from the Panthers, though, is a little bit interesting because I do feel like if they started Bryce the rest of the season, they would undoubtedly probably have a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, and with them more likely than not going to draft a quarterback now, again with their first-round pick. Wouldn't you kind of want to have your pick at the litter and be a top of the draft board? Now that you're going to start Andy Dalton, they may be able to be a little bit more competitive and sneak their way into a couple of wins. I guess the trade-off is they just don't want to be a bottom dweller in the NFL and just be a true embarrassment now with a new regime and a new head coach. And with how quick their owner David Tepper moves through head coaches and general managers, maybe it's like one of those things where they're trying to look out for their job security, because if they are once again one of the worst teams in the league, like win 1 or 2 games, maybe they're all going to get fired once again. But the trade that the Panthers made to move up to select Bryce Young is going to go down in history as well as one of the worst trades in American sports history. The Bears got DJ Moore, who is a stud, a 2023 first-round pick who turned out to be Darnell Wright, who's a good player, a 2023 second-round pick in Tyreek Stevenson, the #1 overall pick in Caleb Williams this past year, and a 2025 second-round pick, which hasn't even been used yet. The Panthers gave all of that up to select Bryce Young, who is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league and is not even going to make it to week number 3 of his second season. I mean, that is just unbelievable. You can't help but think how different things would have been if the Panthers just selected CJ Stroud and had him be the cornerstone of their franchise. Truly unbelievable news on this Monday. Now we will see where the Panthers go from here and if they can really improve as an offense and a team with Andy Dalton taking over, and what this means for Bryce Young's future and what team he could potentially be traded to this offseason, or maybe even at some point this season if things get really, really bad. But I want to know what you think about Bryce Young and where you think things went wrong for him in the NFL. Do you think he can save his career on a new team, or do you just think he doesn't have the capabilities to become a good NFL quarterback? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.